Hello, I'm James O'Brien. I'm here to look back on some of the highlights of our year together on LBC.
What do they do, these imaginary neighbours, that makes them undesirable?
I very rarely talk about Brexit.
Now we're back in control.
It's just not right, is it, that the bloke in charge is telling you to hold your nerve?
Silent majority! Bingo!
You are taking things out of context.
No, I'm
You said
reading
that
it
you
out
were
of
not.
the Bible.
So let's get started.
I'd be absolutely honest. I would not like a trenchant Islamic family moving in next to me.
And how would you know? How would you know the depth of their religious
I know
beliefs?
the culture, James, and this is the
But
problem.
how would you spot it, Phil?
That there is a...
I love these calls. To be fair, this could have been at any one of the last 10 years. They tend to come around with unerring regularity. But watching it, which obviously I don't normally watch myself in the middle of these things, sometimes listen back to the show. But I do. My face is quite transparent, isn't it? You can give away quite a lot with facial expressions. I look a little bit like a fisherman who perhaps thinks he's got a bite.
Genuine issue. What about what?
But what would it be,
James?
Phil? Again, I need to ask you some more. I need
recently
to ask you
what
some more
happened
questions,
again,
Phil. We're talking about you and your imaginary neighbours, all right? So we can go back over my greatest hits of gammon baiting if you want, but I think it'll be boring for people who haven't spent as much time watching my YouTube clips as you have. What is it about your imaginary Muslim neighbours? What do they do that makes them undesirable neighbours for you?
Because, look, there is a cultural difference.
Look, my questions are really straightforward, and everybody else, everybody can hear me talking.
I do love the people who are used to giving uninterrupted diatribes of bigotry and don't know how to cope when they're simply asked to explain the simplest element of their prejudices. You'd think they'd expect it by now.
What do they do, these imaginary neighbours, that makes them undesirable?
Well, they're imaginal. So how they're, as you said, they're imaginary. So how can I really state exactly what I'm saying?
Because you know that you don't want to live next door to them. What is it that these imaginary neighbours do that you're confident a Polish family would never do? You know there are Polish Muslims.
Well,
do they blend in?
Muslims, James. That doesn't make the point.
Do they blend in, though? Do the Polish Muslims?
Anything about their Bible?
You keep talking, Phil.
It is the fanatics in all these situations that steal the show.
Phil, of course, he's a fanatic, although he doesn't realise that.
Because they are.
Do Polish Muslims blend in, Phil?
Don't care. But if you do not acknowledge,
do Polish Muslims blend in, Phil?
A large swathe of the silent majority.
Silent majority, bingo.
Do Polish Muslims blend in?
It all depends whether they were abiding by, strict Islamic practices.
And how would you tell? How would you tell? How would you tell that? How could you tell that? But just from living next door to them.
I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, James. This is quite ridiculous.
Mate, you've come on the radio.
So you don't want to live next door to Muslims. Absolutely adamant that you'd be able to articulate why not. And then as soon as you're asked, what exactly is it you wouldn't want to live next door to, mate? I refuse to go down this rabbit hole.
Talk to me about people you wouldn't want to live next door to, and I'm asking why. Why, Phil?
I am totally. I don't.
What would the neighbours do? What would the imaginary neighbours do that would make them undesirable?
Bone in my body, but I am culturalist, James.
Say that again.
I'm not prepared.
Say that bit again about the racist bone in your body, because some people missed it.
I don't have a racist bone in my body.
But you don't want to live next door to brown people.
No, I do have a culturalist bone in my body, James.
Culturalist? What does that word mean?
Culture.
No, culturalist, you said.
Well, as in racist, James, for goodness sake. I'm just using
exactly,
it in the same
Phil.
manner.
Yes, exactly, you are. You're not supposed to say that bit out loud.
Okay, I'm a single mum, I've got kids. I'm a single mum because my partner passed away. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. You shouldn't be sorry.
No, I work hard, I feed my children, and I am struggling. My landlord has just put my rent up again by another £250. You're telling me to hold my nerve?
Yeah.
How am I meant to hold my nerve when I have children I need to feed? I'm trying to work. I'm trying to juggle everything. I'm going to the point where I'm not eating because I'm feeding my children. You're telling me to hold my nerve.
I've had quite a lot of that this year. The gulf, the gaping chasm between the world that Rishi Sunak thinks that he inhabits and the world that my callers inhabit. And you sense with that caller almost the reluctance to share. the full details of how difficult she's finding things, but it works perfectly, doesn't it, in juxtaposition with what Sunak does. Days like this, we'll play the Sunak clip again and again and again. We'll hit people over the head with it just to drive home how horribly out of touch he is. And I think it's fair to say things haven't improved much.
Quite a disgusting, vile thing to say, personally. And I think they need to get down to bare basics. They need to get back down to grassroots. They need to come and speak to the people and then say, hold your nerve. Go and see these people who are struggling. Go and see these people who are holding our nerve when we're trying to pay bills, make sure our kids have got food and stuff on their back and a roof over their head. Tell us to hold our nerve then, seriously, because I tell you what, you have no concept, you have no idea. This government is rubbish. We need a different government. We need an election ASAP to sort out this dross that is running our country, because personally I think they're quite disgusting and vile. Sorry.
No, don't apologise. Well, no, do you know, not normally I'd make some semi-witty jibe at this point.
Do. I love it when you do that.
Well, I'd say something like, oh, come on, Claire, get off the fence, or tell us what you really think, or something like that. But I'm not going to. I don't know, about a third of a way into that diatribe, I'm afraid I got the hairs on the back of my neck started to stand up, because you put it so beautifully, so powerfully, and it's just not right, is it, that the bloke in charge is telling you to hold your nerve?
Just obviously, I mean, for all the kind of silly boastfulness and stuff, without callers like Claire, we wouldn't have a show, and I probably wouldn't have a job.
The slow realisation that Brexit was a terrible mistake continues.
I very rarely talk about Brexit, so it'll be interesting to see how this one develops.
Now we're back in control. We're regulating our own businesses even more than they were as EU members. Brexit has failed.
For you then?
I'm sure that my memory is not deceiving me, but didn't he once say this?
If Brexit is a disaster, I will go and live abroad. I'll go and live somewhere else.
It's a shame, of course, that we're not in the European Union anymore, because then there'd be 27 countries to which he could move more or less freely.
So I'm a teacher, and I teach in a school in a deprived area. And a couple of weeks ago, we were doing potato. You carve a potato, you dip it in some paint, you put it on some paper.
Yes.
And
I've not got any funny comments to make during this one, because it was horrible. It was just awful, this. It was December of 2023 as well, so it's still very fresh in my memory.
Yes.
And a kid said, Miss, what are you going to do with the little bits of potato that are left over from the potato printing? I said, well, I'm going to bin it. And the child said to me, Miss, can I take it home? Because my mum hasn't got much in the cupboard, so can I eat these bits of potato that are left over? So to me, I can suck it up by saying, yes, Mrs. Thatcher changed Britain. I can agree with that, because the important thing is that we need to get these characters out of government. We need to get these disillusioned Tories to vote Labour. That's the important thing. And then once, please God, we're in power, then we can put pressure on Starmer to try and do a platform that I'd be happier with.
It's beautifully put. How confident are you? I mean, and you're not allowed to say, well, he couldn't make it worse, all right? So how confident are you that Starmer will improve that lad's life?
I'm confident, because I was at Labour conference and I heard really inspirational people speaking about how they're going to change things. So one of the big ones, halving. A lot of the children I teach, there's families where there's a lot of domestic violence.
Yeah.
And one of the missions the aim is to halve violence against women and girls. And the idea of the missions, I'm not sure everyone has kind of got it. It's that you get education, you get the police, you get the NHS, you get everybody, all the organs of the state working on this mission to try and make this happen. And for some of the children I teach who are escaping domestic violence, even if we don't manage to do halving domestic violence. But the thing is, at least Starmer and Yvette Cooper and, just at least these people care about domestic violence. At least this is something that they want to try and fix. Whereas our current lot, they're wanging on about the Elgin marbles and, the people on it. So, yes, absolutely. Sometimes, for me, it is really difficult.
She ended up providing a more uplifting account of why it's worth engaging in politics than any politician I've heard from in the whole of 2023. But it began with her recalling an exercise in the classroom where she teaches, where the old potato printer, when you carve a little shape in half a potato and stick it in paint, and a kid wanted to take the potato scrapings home because there was so little food in the cupboard. That's when radio phone-ins are at their most powerful and in a way magical, although that seems like an odd word to use, because it's a bit like a sort of portal opening up into other realities that you would never ordinarily see. And then she went on to provide an account of why she is out canvassing all the time for the Labour Party. I think it was Helen that said something about, I'd never thought of it this way before, that voting and politics, it's not like getting married. It's just about getting on the bus that is going in the right direction. And I find that really helpful.
James, what we've got to understand, I said, you've got to get things in its context.
I
now,
am. The context is the book of Exodus and the book of Leviticus, which you just cited as your justification for what I describe as homophobia. So I'm just wondering why you pick that bit and yet you ignore the other bits. Are you allowed contact with a woman while she is in her period of menstrual uncleanliness, Clive?
Yeah.
No, you're not, mate. That's Leviticus 15:19 to 24.
But again, James, you are taking things out of context.
No, I'm reading it out of the Bible.
You want to bring it back to men and men.
I'm bringing it back to...
There's a bit missing from the beginning, so you're not quite sure what this is about. But if I'm talking about the book of Leviticus, then I'm almost certainly talking to a homophobe who didn't expect me to know my way around the Bible at least as well as they did. One, possibly the only benefit of being taught by Benedictine monks.
I'm bringing it back to Leviticus, which is what you just told me to do. So how can you tell whether or not a woman is in her period of menstrual uncleanliness?
Okay, all right then. So
and how close to it are you allowed to be?
Sure, okay. James, okay then. So
you're going to have to answer some of my questions at least at one point. So let's start with the slavery. Is it okay to sell my daughter into slavery?
No, it's not.
But it says in Leviticus that it is, Exodus that it is.
No, this was what mankind was doing because there was situation and circumstance.
But mankind was also lying with man, and you said that was bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why is that bad, but selling your daughter into slavery is not acceptable?
What we have to get back is to God's ideal.
No, mate, what you have to do is tell me how I can tell which bits of the Old Testament you think we should...
Can I give you an example?
No, you can answer my questions. No,
yes, I'm going to.
No, I said no.
Give an example.
No, you can't give me an example. You need to tell me which bits of Leviticus you choose to obey and which bits you don't.
That was never God's plan.
Yeah, you're still just going to talk. You can't answer any of these questions. Absolutely remarkable. But I do have to issue an apology, unfortunately, and I have to read this because I need to get it right. On yesterday's programme, I frequently referred to the Conservative MP for Ashfield, Lee Anderson, as being, and I quote now, as thick as mince. I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to Mince. Mystery Hour next.
God, he's insufferable, isn't he? So there's just a little taste of some of the moments from 2023 that were quite special. You can find a much longer reel on YouTube. We'll be back, of course, in the new year, 10 a.m. every weekday morning, and I look forward to spending even more time with you than we did last year.